Welcome to the Coast to Coast podcast, brought to you by PlayPicks and the Lines. Coming to you from the West Coast, Josh Lander, joined by my guy Nate Weitzer on the East Coast. And we are rolling along with some player props here for you guys on the first day of the first round of the NBA playoffs here as we get locked in. We are recording this as the Hawks locked up their victory. We know who's playing in the East now. Just need to wait on that Western one. But when you guys are seeing this, we will be tuned into these player props. So make sure to like and subscribe to that page as we're going to continue to bring these to you, as well as each and every game video throughout this postseason. And also head to thelines.com. We've got that props tool there for you. Make sure you're getting the best odds on all those NBA player props available throughout the playoffs. And head to play.thelines.com as well if you want the opportunity to win a $25 Amazon gift card by heading there, getting every single pick correct in that NBA Daily Challenge. And we, like I said, we'll send out that $25 Amazon gift card to as many people as who get it correct. And as always, if you do still need a FanDuel or a DraftKings account, head to ftpicks.com or dkpicks.com. Find those listings in your area, such as what we've got for today and tonight's play of props. Nate, let's get into it.
Yeah, I'm going with Ja Morant. I think the value is there because, like we were saying in the game video, there's reason to be concerned about some rust for him, having played just one game, just kind of a quick token performance against the Pelicans on April 9th. Basically been out since March 18th otherwise. Just resting a sore knee, though. Not like there's a huge concern. I mean, he should be 100% good to go here. And he's not a guy who struggles to have his wind too much. In his last 8 before his injury, Ja obviously lighting it on fire, 34.5 points, 6 rebounds, 7 assists per game with a 37% usage rate. It's interesting that he struggled against Minnesota, or the numbers indicate that he hasn't been up to par. But you can kind of parse it out. I mean, he had 33 and 8 in the first meeting with them this season. So that gets you where you need to go here for 36.5 points and assists is what we're talking. Just minus 104 at FanDuel. The second one was a massive blowout. The third one, no Steven Adams. That does really hurt Ja's offense, the way he operates with him. And then the fourth one, he shot 7 for 25 from the field. Still had 20 points in a win and 34% usage rate there. This is a great matchup on paper, right? I mean, the Wolves allow the most assists per game. They've been allowing a league high 11 assists to point guards the last 15, the fourth most points to point guards the last 30. They also allow the most free throw attempts. They have an aggressive blitzing defense that Ja can knife through and just pick apart with lobs or dunks or floaters. He did have 34 and 37 his last 2 against Minnesota last year, and the total's 236 in this game. So, and he's the favorite to be the top point scorer at plus 125 there. So if he's going to lead this game in scoring, and it has the highest total of any playoff game we've had so far, and you're counting on him to maybe get 5 or 6 more assists besides that, I feel pretty comfortable about that. I think you can play around with some of these bonuses too, for him to get 30 points or 10 assists in the win. Because I think, the Grizz, after the way they went out in the playoffs last year, they're going to be charged up. They might have a slow start in the first quarter or something, but I think Ja will be the engine that keeps them going down the stretch and gets his points up.
Yeah, that would add up. I mean, I don't think there's any blowout factor, to be honest, in this game. I think, if anything, this is a weird game where, this is the one where the Timberwolves come out and they bring it and they really seem like they might be able to steal game 1 in the series and make it a legit series. And maybe they do pull it out. And that's the only reason I might stay away from a player performance double. But I think the Ja props are nice because I do think that even if, the Grizzlies do win this game, they're going to need to they're not necessarily going to struggle off the bat, but they are going to be giving up points to the Timberwolves. I think Timberwolves are going to come out really strong, really hot, and continue to sort of keep that momentum going that they built in their win in the play-in series, where they seemed like they won Game 7 of the finals. But we move on to the next prop that we both really like. We're kind of talking of just point guards here for the Dallas Mavericks without Luka Doncic playing either Dinwiddie or Brunson. We can just mention both their points sit at 20.5 points at -116 on FanDuel. You might also consider Brunson assists. I know you like that, Nate. 4.5 for him is really bad odds at -152 because it seems like they really think that's the deal. But at 6 assists, if you sort of hit that at least 6 assists there, that's +130. So just one more than that 4.5 assists, right? It sounds like really good odds there. And I would agree with that. I think Brunson does take a bit more of the point guard, if you will, and facilitator role. I think Dinwiddie's a scorer. I think he's a puller. I think he's a very dynamic player. I think he's like a better version of what Jordan Clarkson wishes he was, essentially, if he was a really competent NBA player, which is what I think Dinwiddie is. So, I think you look at what Dinwiddie does, specifically the points that he scores when he's not playing with Luka since he's come to the Mavs. You're talking about 31 points a game on 54, 46, 86 splits. Really, really great numbers for the dude who, at one point in time, it was like if he took a jump or a leap, he could be, a top 2 or 3 player on an NBA champion. And I think that's about his ceiling, to be honest. He could be the second banana on a championship team. That's how good I think he is. He's flourishing in this system where kudos once again to Jason Kidd, where I think, you see what happens once Luka comes out. Since Dinwiddie came to the team, since the team has been Jalen Brunson and Dinwiddie when Luka's out, that's who runs this team. We talked about it in that game video. So you look at what that means, and Dinwiddie at 20.5 points to me is just way too low. Like I said, in those games without Luka this season, 31 points a game. And last thing I'd say is whoever you consider a point guard between Dinwiddie and Brunson. I mean, the other thing I'll say is when they both play without Luka, they are the second most. They average the highest or second highest percentage of points off of unassisted field goals, because it's a lot of point guard pull up one-on-one play with some guys who can all break down other guys off the dribble. That's why you get a lot of unassisted field goals. So both of them can be considered point guards if you want. And Utah allows the 10th most points to that position, and is just not as good against guards, obviously, as the perimeter defense isn't close to what their interior defense is with Rudy Gobert.
Yeah, I think that's the key, is them being able to break down off the dribble and then just hit in the mid-range with Rudy Gobert playing that drop coverage. Brunson is a lot. He had 27 points without Luka on the floor on Christmas against this team. He is the prototype to burn a Rudy Gobert defense, kind of a lot like Chris Paul, the way he gets into the middle of the floor and then uses that quick dribble before pulling up. Always on balance, it seems, always taking good shots. And he's going to be the distributor. Yeah, I mean, he's averaging 7.5 dimes without Luka this season in a healthy sample size. So, yeah, for him to get 6 at plus odds, I definitely like that against a Jazz team that has not been very good on the road. And then in that Toronto-Philly game, I think we're all going to want to watch that, 6 p.m. Eastern. Pascal Siakam coming off a huge triple-double, 37, 10, and 12 against this team. Granted, no Matisse Thybulle in that game because it was in Toronto. Right. But it's not like Pascal has had much trouble scoring. With Thybulle out there, he's still averaging 27 points, 8 rebounds, 8 assists, shot 50% or better in 4 straight matchups with the 76ers. So for him to get 24 points is minus 105 there at FanDuel, or the 32.5 points rebounds. Don't mind adding that. Against a Philly team that's 29th in rebounding. They're also 28th in fast break points allowed, and Pascal may be the main reason Toronto is one of the top fast breaking teams out there. Philly's defense has been overrated. I mean, it was overrated initially when Harden got out there. I mean, now we see that it's just pretty damn vulnerable with Harden and Maxey in the backcourt. And they have a 115 defensive rating, their last 12 at home, allowing the 10th most free throws in that span. And Josh, as I always tell you, Pascal rolls out of bed and goes, "Ay," to try to get that foul call on his way out the door. So I think, he should get 24 points here to lead Toronto.
Yeah, the points are better odds on DraftKings at minus 106 than the points and rebounds, 23.5. I do like those. I think he's a bad matchup for this team. Even if Thybulle is in, like you said, he's still looking at better than 27 a game against this team in his last 5, and only one of those didn't have Thybulle. When he gets back into Toronto and there's especially no Thybulle, he's a really bad matchup for all of them, including mostly Tobias Harris and Danny Green, as we talk about in the game video. So I think he's a great bet to succeed against his team. To the extent that Embiid is also going to succeed against his team, we just really couldn't go ahead and feel great about 33.5 points as his prop in game 1 there against the Raptors, just because we know he kills them. We didn't really have necessarily the I don't want to say the guts to take it. We just weren't feeling it nearly as much as the value you're getting on Siakam, who also plays super, super well against this team. So here we go. I'm going to go ahead and take an under on a man that everyone's going to think I'm maybe smoking a little something. And I promise you, regardless of what I'm smoking, it has nothing to do with the fact that I think Jokic is a good under in game one against this Warriors team. 29.5 points is minus 120 at DK, and the over is minus 105. So somebody agrees with me that this might be a pretty good under, as if you look in terms of who's setting these lines, that it's a better bet to take under 29.5 points. I'm looking at it because of the stats that I was looking at when I was trying to break down this game anyway, which we have that game video up for you, as I mentioned, because we have every single game video for you in the playoffs. I'll start just with on the road this season, 26 points a game. That's 2 fewer than at home, where he's averaging almost 29 because it's 28.4 or 5, whatever it is. So 20.5 at home versus 26 on the road. When he's playing Draymond Green, now I will say earlier in the season, he has a couple really, really good games against the Dubs when Draymond hasn't played against the Nuggets all season. So he's been doing that without Day-Day. That's Draymond's nickname, playing in any of those games. But in his career against Draymond, we're talking 23 points, not bad stats. Like, this guy's going to the Hall of Fame. And so his floor is 23 points, 10 boards, and 8 assists. And that's what he's averaging in his career in 35 minutes, with a decent individual offensive rating of 115, but below what you expect from a man who is, a walking offense unto himself. So I just think that, the 23 points a game against Draymond, the fact that he averages 3.4 points below what he needs to get to in his prop on the road this season. Also, I think it might be bloated because his last 10 on the road, he's averaging 29 points, 15 boards, 6.5 assists. But as we talk about in the game video, in those 10 road games, we're talking about Sacramento twice, Portland, Charlotte, Indy, LA, the Lakers, and the Wizards. All those teams are horrible on defense, or just not even real NBA teams at that point. His previous 15 road games, when he was playing teams like Boston, Toronto, the Bucks, etc., including the Warriors, 23 points a game in those 15 with 11.5 boards. I just like under the points, man. I just don't think against Draymond and the way that the Dubs play, they're back to their full squad. And when Draymond played on this team at home at the start of the season for the first 2 months, they were far and away the best defensive team at home with a 98 defensive rating. So I just think we're going to see that in game one. I'm not saying anything else about the rest of the series for now, except for in game one. Even if Joker has a great game and goes for 25 and 15, he's not getting 30 points, is my point.
First of all, I'm proud of you for going out on a limb. You refused to take Trae Young in that first play-in game on the under. And now you're taking the boldest move with the prospective MVP under in his first playoff game. I'm with it on the points for sure. He's not a prolific 30-point reliable scorer at this point. He is a guy who will fill it up. I'd be scared of taking anything involving his rebounds and assists, but honestly, I kind of think this could be a blowout. I think the Warriors are sort of forming like Voltron. It depends if Curry is going to be healthy enough. But you look at Draymond, they've only played 4 home games since Curry went down. And the last 3, Draymond started to play around 30 minutes a game, started to flirt with his triple doubles and post things like a 92 defensive rating against the Suns, with the team posting great defensive numbers overall. If he's playing like that, then we're looking at the Warriors at the beginning of the season where they were allowing about 101. And there's just not going to be a ton of available stats out there for Jokic or for the Nuggets. I still worry that Jokic could get 30 points and the rest of his team does absolutely nothing. But I think there is a chance maybe the Nuggets are scratching their heads after this one and going back to the drawing board because they're like, oh, we are sort of facing one of the championship favorites, and they are ready for this one at home. Yeah, Toronto right now +4 in Philly. I've seen it a little bit higher than that, but it isn't moving much. Neither is the total at 216. Philly, pretty small favorites here in the opener at -4, and pretty small favorites for the series when you consider it. They're -180. People obviously have reasons to doubt James Harden in the playoffs, and they've seen that come to fruition basically with the Sixers going 5-7 straight up against teams with winning records after they got him in the lineup there. After that nice little 5-game stretch, the wheels kind of fell off, and they did lose twice to Toronto in that span. These teams have gotten into some rock fights lately, but the last one did go over. We'll address this game in a second. 3 other games on this Saturday slate. I think our favorite game is Jazz at Mavs. Mavs are still plus 4.5 at home, but that total, Josh, is now 209.5, keeps dropping. And we talked about taking an alternate total over 214, maybe higher, kind of zigging where the line is zagging because Luka's out. We still think there will be points. Minnesota plus 7 at Memphis. That total's up to 235, getting crazy high for a playoff game. And then the Nuggets are plus 6 at the Warriors, who are expected to have Steph Curry in that game one. Yeah, I mean, I'm trying not to get too invested in regular season results when I'm analyzing this playoff game. Yeah. I mean, this series, first and foremost, I am impressed by how well Siakam has done against the Sixers, first and foremost, by how good the Raptors are when they have OG out there. They're a dangerous team. They're 31-17 straight up, defensive rating under 110. Their defensive rating is also under 110 in their last 10 road games. They've won 7 of those. 8-2 to the under. Pace pretty damn slow at 94.5. They're not hitting threes. They're giving up threes, but Philly's not hitting threes. They do a pretty good job down low. And they have historically done a good job with Joel Embiid, but this season is the season of Embiid, and he has dispelled that narrative a little bit with pretty much back-to-back big double-doubles. I mean, he went 30-10 in that last meeting. They had no answers for him. They in general don't have any answers for him. I think it's just like a creative scheme from Nick Nurse to have gotten the ball out of his hands, forced him into some weird shots, but he seems to have figured it out. And when we talk about the coaching matchup, Nick Nurse is a better coach than Doc Rivers, and Doc Rivers and James Harden have that reason to doubt them in the playoffs. But Embiid doesn't require a ton of coaching right now. He is maybe the most unstoppable offensive player there is in the game. Right there with Kevin Durant, and it's especially stuff for a Toronto team that plays kind of centerless basketball to deal with him in the playoffs. Harden, I don't think you can really read into it, but not very good against Toronto in these last 2 games, shooting 33 and 12% from 3. Has been handing out 11 assists, though, keeping the offense on pace. I think it doesn't require a savant coach to figure out how to maybe utilize him a little better, how to get Maxey and Harris more involved and get that offense flowing better for the Sixers. At home, I do like them in game 1. I like them to open this series well. I think it will be at least a 6-game series, though. I think they're going to have a very hard time in Toronto. They probably won't have Matisse Thybulle in any of those games because of his vaccination status. So I'm a little hesitant to bet the series at this point, but I do think Philadelphia, with all the pressure on their shoulders, does come out and perform in game 1, get that win. Interested to tease them maybe down to a pick'em and get that over at 212. It's not the most confident thing. Maybe you want to tease it with another game, like we're saying that Mavs over. You could get down to 205 if you tease the Sixers to a pick'em. Or that Grizzlies, you could get under 240. I mean, we're a little more, we're not as certain about what's going to happen in that Grizzlies game, though. So I think Sixers to win here, but I am leaning towards over a little bit. If you're teasing in this game to 212 over, there's some game theory here that says the Sixers are going to win. They're going to do it with offense. They're going to do it because, those other 2 guys that I mentioned besides Harden and Embiid are also having good games. I don't think they have a good recipe for stopping Siakam and Anunoby, who's out there now. Van Fleet, healthy. Gary Trent raining threes. I do think we'll go over like we did the last time these teams met. It went to 233. I think we're closer to that than the rock fight we saw, 93-88, when Philly was just mired in that real haze. I think they snap out of it. I think they win game 1 with a solid offensive performance.
I think that's fair. Man, I don't know what to like this series numbers too, or what I was looking at, because I think this is going to be a rock fight all series. I think the reason that we're struggling to, I know you're like, look, money line, Philly, game 1, Embiid, not going to let them lose. that's all we have to go on. We don't really have any, as you mentioned, it's not like we have faith in Doc Rivers. It's not like we have faith in James Harden in the playoffs. To be honest, we don't even really have faith that James Harden is the same James Harden he's been even in the regular season when he's been averaging, above 25 points a game in his career. He's not that player anymore. I mean, he's played with other players, maybe not of Embiid's ilk, as you said, right now, probably the most unstoppable offensive player in the game alongside Durant at the very least. And yet we still, that's all we have to go on that we feel comfortable with. So, when I was talking to you and our baseball guy, Mo, a little bit about basketball as well the other day, we were talking, my question was, do you think that the Raptors can win this series if Embiid drops 30 to 35 points a game? The answer is kind of yes. I mean, look, they are 30-10 straight up this season when Embiid scores 30 or more points. A lot of two of those losses to Phoenix, a couple of those losses to Denver, Brooklyn. There's one of them to Toronto. The point is when he does score 30 to 35 points, they can lose. Those 10 losses are two good teams. Do you think Toronto is a good team now? Yes, I do. Why were they not as good and consistent earlier in the season? OG Anunoby couldn't stay in the game. Gary Trent Jr. couldn't stay in the game. Pascal Siakam missed a week or two over the course of a month. That was crucial for them, and it took him a while to get back into the form that he is now, where he's been second team All NBA for the last half of the season. He probably won't get it. He'll get plenty of third team nods. And he might even make that third team just because of how stellar he's been in the second half. And he is a horrible, horrible matchup for Philly if you're a Philly fan. Tobias Harris is a turnstile. He has not moved his feet on defense since like 1989, apparently, because I just watched him get blown by. I mean, in that last game where it did go over, and it went over in large part because Pascal Siakam dropped 37 with, I believe he had a near triple double in that game. And so, that if you look at who was guarding him that whole game, that was Tobias Harris. He was guarding that was his matchup the whole time. And when Tobias Harris was guarding Pascal in that game, Pascal dropped, I believe, 22 points in about 8.5 minutes with him being guarded, like I said, by Tobias Harris. And there's nobody else to guard him. Danny Green spent a couple minutes on him as well. But once Danny Green came off of Tyrese Maxey started to go off. So there's some, once he came off him, not Tyrese Maxey, Gary Trent started to go off at that point because Tyrese Maxey was guarding Gary Trent, and he has yet to really pick up that defense as well. So I do like going over in this game one. I really is kind of what I'm getting at with the points, because I mean, look, Embiid's going to get his. Nobody is stopping him. Not Precious Achiuwa and not Chris Boucher, that's for sure. And as we mentioned, they've been sans a center in Toronto for a while now. So really, since Serge was there as like a set up, strong power forward / center. So I do think Embiid gets his. I do think Toronto can win this series if Embiid's averaging 30 points a game. I just don't want to take this series at the roughly plus 150 on DraftKings right now that I'm getting to take the Raptors. I feel like the Raptors are like, it's reasonable to think the Raptors can win this series. It's just not enough juice with the firepower on the offensive side of the ball for Philly, that I think to a degree we're going to run into situations where who's getting that one bucket for the Raptors down the stretch? Who's going to be that clutch time guy? And I do think that there's a little bit more clutch time there's plenty more clutch time offense on the Sixers. There's guys that can create their own shots. They are a better half court offense than the Toronto Raptors are, something that we look at once the playoffs start and things slow down a bunch. So look, both these teams playing slow paces, but both of them playing efficient offensively. And look, Philly hasn't been that efficient against Toronto. It's been very simple. Give Embiid the ball. He gets 25 shots a game. It doesn't matter if his volume, if his efficiency isn't quite there, because to be honest, he's only had an 110 offensive rating against these Raptors this season, has Embiid, yet he's still averaging 29 and 12 or whatever, right? So he's going to be fine. He's going to get his. He's going to put the ball in the bucket. I think over in this game, I like Philly money line in this game as well. I'm just not quite ready to hit. I don't think I want to touch this series line for Philly in this one at all.
Well, if you don't feel like you're getting enough value for the Raptors in the series, then conversely, you are getting decent value for the Sixers. I mean, it would be a massive choke and an embarrassment for them after they mortgaged this for Harden to go out in the first round. I don't know if that affects them negatively, that pressure, but I think it will motivate them to pull this one out. I mean, with Embiid being one of the best players in the world, Toronto, a great overall team, maybe has the coaching edge, but eventually talent does kind of win out in these playoff series. Yeah. So I would consider parlaying the Sixers with other series results you like locks, like the Bucks, or the Warriors maybe, and then you start to get some pretty good juice with that Sixers series win. But you mentioned when Embiid scores 30, their record very good. He's averaging 30 and a half in his last 10 home games, along with 12 and a half rebounds. The double-double in a win, as always, is a nice little hack to get you pretty much even money on that money line at FanDuel. The Raptors are not going to be able to stop him from boarding up. And yeah, I think we'll see a lot of Scotty Barnes on him, actually. He's been guarding the opposite center most often, but I'll take my chances with Embiid on a rookie who's definitely undersized. Maybe can keep him from bullying to the paint because he's so strong. But Embiid, so good on those turnarounds in the mid-range right now that I think he'll have no problem just kind of destroying the rook. And some player props to look at, though, on the other side of the ball with Siakam. Yeah, minus 102 to get 24 points right now. He did have a triple-double in the last time. I think it was a 37-point triple-double against this team. Fred VanVleet also pretty low at 24.5 points assists because he missed their last game with an illness, but he should be good to go here. So I like those on the Toronto side, and that kind of makes me feel like I want points because I kind of feel like Embiid's going to score 35-plus on his own here and get us over.
Yeah, I think it's really funny. You started talking about the way that we both like Pascal and the fact that, like I said, if Pascal starts crushing Tobias Harris and they need to try Danny Green on him for a few minutes, now you've got Gary Trent open a little bit more. You've got Fred VanVleet and you've got OG, who's been missing way too many games for them and is back. So there's plenty of offensive firepower. That Raptors offense is so much better with OG and Anunoby, and it's not even funny. He was ready to take a leap to a most improved player level. I think he was going to be Darius Garland style improvement. Maybe not even as good as Darius on offense, definitely better on defense, but making a jump to being as impactful of a player as Darius Garland, in my opinion, didn't get the chance by missing so many games. But as you were saying that, and as we're talking about all the offense that we do like on Toronto, the bad matchups for Philly on the defensive side of the ball, it's like, yeah, I think we are saying we like points in this one because there's just, look, in this one, you put your house on Embiid getting a double-double. Go ahead and feel very comfortable about him getting 30. And as a result, yeah, I think you've got to like over 216 in that one. If you do like a series bet here, yes, minus 180, you're right. Because I don't like the plus 150 for Toronto to win the series, I am actually just conversely saying I like the minus 180 for Philly. I think it's at least worth it. It's slightly worth it. It's not great odds. There's a little bit of risk. Point is, I would rather have that. I would rather parlay that with like the Bucks, who might even sweep. Get it down to like minus 140 if you get the Bucks series in there and parlay those two on DraftKings rather. That's still really good. And yeah, any player performance double you want for Embiid tonight to get that victory and get that spread down a little bit from 5 to about a pick 'em. Feel good about that as well. We'll continue to have fun with this series, man. It's going to be a fun one. You can consider 6 or 5 games for this series as well. If you put a little bit of money on both and it goes either 6 or 5, you're talking about plus 275 or plus 210 or so on your money on both those bets. So even if you miss one, obviously if you can figure out a way to just hedge a little bit of money in there, you can, or just take one of those two and still get double. I like all that stuff.
Yeah, the Wolves, after their shining moment, are plus 7 here in game 1 at Memphis. Grizz have really been resting for a long time. Ja Morant has played 1 game in the last month. So, I mean, there's a lot of unknowns headed into this game. Definitely. Totals up at 234. We know how these teams can run and gun and score, but it's the playoffs, so we'll see how that looks. I mean, full disclosure, this is a game I'm really curious about. It's probably my least favorite game to bet on from a traditional standpoint on this opening slate. I think
+1.
There are wild unknowns here in terms of the Grizzlies. Yeah, they haven't played meaningful basketball since March. They lost 3 of their last 4, basically had no reason to try to win those games. Yeah. Ja Morant has played 1 game since March 18th. They had that weird stretch where they were just way better without him. Then they started losing other guys out of the lineup. Minnesota is a real feisty team that's given them some trouble this season. However, I mean, failed to cover in their last 5 trips to Memphis. Really, really bad numbers in terms of, in fact, failed to cover in 9 of their last 10 in Memphis. I mean, that was not the same team, but it's kind of a house of horrors at that point. They were scoring just 104.5 points per game in those 10 games. They have a 120.5 defensive rating their last 5 trips to Memphis. Memphis scored 120 at least in 8 of their last 9 home games that mattered, if that,
Right.
excluding the last one that they didn't care about at all.
Yeah.
And they averaged 123.5 in those home games against Minnesota. I mean, those are regular season numbers. They are indicative that I'm not really willing to fade the Grizzlies offense at all. I do think there's going to be some rust here, though. I mean, they haven't played in weeks. Minnesota just had a hard fought, true playoff style win over the Clippers. So I might be looking at under 61.5 points in the first half for Memphis as a way to kind of exploit that. That's easing back into things. A lot of pressure on this team. While they're a young team, it's just a lot of scrutiny in terms of, they didn't perform in the playoffs last year after this great regular season run. They won game 1 and then just got swept right out of there. Now they had this amazing regular season where they were just the best team against the spread all year. Can they back it up in the playoffs? I think so. I mean, I think I would be okay teasing them down to -3 with other games and saying I do think Memphis is going to win game 1. I think Minnesota is a very talented team, but is getting a little overrated in terms of how they performed down the stretch and all the scrutiny of them winning that game over the Clippers. The Clippers kind of gagged.
Yes, I did.
Yeah. I mean, Memphis is just such an extraordinary season where they were just so deep, so good in every facet, paint points, and particularly at home where that crowd is rocking. Like I said, they score on 120. They're 10-1 since the All-Star break with the best net rating. And I'm willing to back them to win for sure. I'm not quite on board with -7.
And man, like I'm sitting here and I'm going, look, we nailed the Clippers. I nailed the Clippers. I know that I had to drag you there with me in the middle of a video talking about Minnesota and the Clippers in that playing game. But as I said, for 3 quarters and 8 minutes, we were 100% right. And it all started with whether or not we thought Cat was going to show up. And guess what? He didn't. Do we think he's going to show up in this matchup? No. I don't know. Steven Adams isn't exactly soft down there, is he? Right? As last I checked, he's still getting 27 minutes a game. I think he gets 27 minutes a game. I know. Look. Starting with what we were talking about here with the line, like I'm partial to Minnesota being bad. That's my take on Minnesota more so than everybody else. I think it's fool's gold. I don't believe in Cat's ability to come up big yet. Until I see it, I'm going to continue to say I don't believe in it. D'Lo is so sporadic that I don't know when I'm going to be able to rely on him to take good shots and not force it. And if he's making his shots, then it looks really good. And there was a couple of shots that I thought weren't great and they went in. There were a couple of the no, they went in shots in that last playing game. They went in. When they don't, it looks a lot worse for the Wolves, man. It looks a lot worse. And Ant was great. We both said we could easily see Ant going for 35 or 30 plus in this game because he's just a baller who steps up. I'm never going to bet his unders ever, but it's just hard for me to continue to bank on him to do that consistently when he has such fluctuating numbers as well in just his second season as like a 20-year-old dude, right? So no insult meant there. Just that's where he's at in his career right now. So looking at the numbers, like my very first thought was like 233 is just too low because I still think this pace stays really high. And I think that, I also thought at the time, by the way, past tense, that if I looked at, those numbers last year for how the Memphis Grizzlies played against Utah in that first round that they lost by, in 5 games, it was a fast pace. It was, almost 101 pace in the playoffs, which is very fast for the playoffs. When you really see those things, some of them get all the way down to the low 90s at times. So that's still maintained fast against a team like Utah, who definitely last year especially wanted to continue that pace up and keep it that way in the playoffs. And they were just like, look, we're better than you at this. We'll keep chucking threes. We're not worried about long rebounds or whatever. And they were just a better team. Memphis wasn't ready. I do think, look, the talk about Memphis is, they are a regular season team because they're deep as hell. That's why they're able to at one point be 20-2 without Ja, ending, I think, 20-5 because they started losing a bit at the end, like you said. And that was a huge reason for it. Like, no other team in the league, except for stands, maybe the Suns, could have had four of their five starters missing and still beat a good team like the Suns, at home. So that's not how it goes in the playoffs. Every single, that's 7-man rotation max for real, with an 8th man getting maybe 10 minutes at max in a game. So it's not as important to have that deep bench. I'm conflicted because I don't believe in Minnesota. I believe in Memphis. Well, I do think they'll decline from the pace of play that they had in terms of their success in the regular season a bit. I still think that with the Warriors, who I don't believe in right now until I see Steph play, I do think that the Memphis Grizzlies are conference championship bound. And the last thing I'll say is that obviously the series at minus 330, not necessarily worth it. That's going to happen. They're winning this series. Game 1, I could see them riding that high in terms of the Grizzlies coming in, the rust for Memphis. So if you think that, if you agree with me, 1 +7, I still don't even feel comfortable with it. I think the best bet because of that logic is something we talked about briefly, which is that first half money line is +175, or even that first quarter money line is +135. And if you think like we do, like there's some rust going on there with Ja coming back and not playing with this team, they play differently with him, and Memphis or Minnesota just riding that high of feeling like they already won Game 7 of a playoff game in that play-in game the way they reacted. I think they'll continue that sort of that high and keep it going.
Yeah, I like the first quarter line more because Memphis, with that superior depth, could probably pull back ahead in the second quarter. But too much pressure, too many nerves on Memphis to not think about, it being a coin flip in the first quarter, especially the way Ant and D'Lo can come out shooting. Cat a lot to prove after his awful playing performance as well. I'm just still trying to figure out this Wolves team in terms of, are they really good or not? And I mean, looking at their road game log, they've actually lost 8 of their last 10 against teams that are in the playoffs on the road, including one at Memphis. And weirdly enough, the 2 that they've won, Josh, are on back-to-backs. So that is kind of the situation here, again, where they're at a rest disadvantage, but they're so young, so spunky, that kind of plays into their hands to say, what, we're just going to go out there and play. I mean, that's the Ant Edwards mindset, right? He doesn't feel any sort of pressure. He's just going to go out there and ball. And but Steven Adams has held Cat in check pretty well in 3 meetings there. I'm not really bullish on the over. I don't really like overs in the playoffs in general, unless they're way, way lower than this, than 234. So I would think, if you want to parlay in this game, Memphis -3 and under 238. But I would go elsewhere to get some value if you want to tease this down to Memphis. I think it's kind of a wait and see mode, to be honest. I mean, see how game 1 goes. Definitely feel fine taking Memphis to win the series, but I'm not quite sure if they're going to win game 1 or come out strong in it.
Agreed. Yeah, agreed. I think this is a game where you don't know enough. Things are a little bit different in the playoffs, like we said, than they will be in the regular season. I think that's where you just start to find EV, man. I think you just go, are the Grizzlies necessarily 7 points better in this scenario than the Grizzlies or than the Timberwolves? And once again, my prediction for game 1 is the Wolves come out hot and firing and really want to bring it to them, especially once again with Ant Edwards being Ant. And that's why I feel better about this, either a first quarter or a first half bet, depending on which one you want to get a little bit more juice on, because that 7-point spread, even if the Grizzlies are down 6 going half, they're down 6 going into the third quarter, even, a couple. I still am scared of a 7-point spread if they just decide to run and gun. The last thing I'll say there is the Timberwolves. There is some I think some legitimacy to the fact that, you can, in terms of the over here, in terms of points rather, and in terms of Memphis being a team to back here. Everything Memphis does, we talk about it all season: points off turnovers, fast break, second chance points in the paint. that's Memphis. That's all of those stats are Memphis, right? They own them, right? They're either 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever in all of those for the season, no matter where they're playing. That's not what Minnesota does well. They're bottom 6 at least in all of the necessary stat categories to defend points in the paint, defend second chance points, defend fast break points, etc. Right? Points off of turnovers because the Wolves turn it over a ton. So there's not a lot to like there for Minnesota. It's why they failed to cover in Memphis their last 5, as we said. So that's why I think there's some value to be found in Minnesota in the first half and the first quarter. Nowhere else in the game, to be honest. And I would prefer an over, but I don't even honestly know if Minnesota will be able to come along if in the third, fourth quarter Memphis decides to lock it up and really shut things down playoff style. So it is the Nuggets headed to the Bay Area, taking on the Golden State Warriors, who are at full strength for the first time in a long time. Talking about Draymond, Iggy, and Steph, and Clay all being on the floor in this one. So we will take a look at some of the best bets we like in it.
Total is 223. Steph Curry is expected. He's probable to play in game 1. It's been out almost a month now with a foot sprain, and that made the Warriors minus 260 to win the series. Nuggets, I believe, still no sign of Michael Porter Jr. or Jamal Murray returning to give them help. So, I mean, it's been a wild ride, but I don't really see them winning this series with no help for Joker, and with Draymond Green potentially exerting his will on the defensive end against the Joker. I mean, it took a little while for Dre to come back to his full form, but I mean, you see in the numbers go back to where he usually is, and that's without Steph on the floor. So you don't see as many of those offensive numbers because of how much they impact each other on that end. But his individual defensive rating down below 100 in his last 3 home games, feeding off that crowd. You look at what he's done against the Joker, really held him pretty much, below his otherworldly averages in terms of 23 points, 11 rebounds, 8 assists with a 115 offensive rating. Joker usually over a 130 offensive rating. So we're going up against Draymond, and I mean the Warriors, they're just forming. They're getting healthy at the right time. With Iggy now back as well, those 2 playoff veterans with Clay out there, his defense is also ramped up as he's gotten healthier. I think it's really about the defense here more than predicting Steph is going to come back and just light him up right away. He hasn't had the most success against Denver this season. It was a struggle bus 2 games ago at 86-89 win right after the All-Star break because it was just Steph, Gary Payton, and Andrew Wiggins scoring double figures in that game. But I don't think we'll quite see that kind of low-scoring battle, but I don't think we'll quite see a shootout the way they combine for 231 the next meeting. Denver's the number 1 3-point defense on the road. So that's the most important thing to remember when you're going up against the Warriors is can they limit you? I think if you're looking at a team total, I actually want to take the Warriors under at 114.5, which is even money. But I like the under for the game too, 223, and I still like the Warriors to win. I just don't like them to score 115. So I would look at ways to tease that. Maybe you want to tease the under up to 227 and get those dubs down to -2, which I think they will handle at home.
Yeah, to be honest with you, I'm staying the hell away from the spread until I see game 1 and see. I'm not saying it's necessarily going to just be indicative of everything we're going to see after that, but I guess more even than talking about it through the lens of game 1 in terms of being scared of picking the dubs, I'm more scared. I would not touch -260. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm not a huge fan of that line. The reason being, to be honest with you, is one of these guys goes down again between Steph, Dre, Clay. What we're talking about here. So I'm not like betting on them to get hurt. I'm betting on the fact that it's still a bit of a question mark to me that we are going to see exactly what we saw, obviously 3 years ago, but even more so, at the beginning of the season when it was just Steph and Draymond as the leaders of the team with Jordan Poole doing his thing on offense, it was still a team that relied on defense. And I think they're going to get back to that. And I think this week and a half definitely helped Draymond. Once again, I want to see where they're all at together at the same time. I don't think it's going to take time for them to click. I think more so I want to see how Draymond's back is going. It's a back. It's not like it's a bruised finger that he can tape to another finger. It's his back, right? So I need to know how that looks at this point. Steph being back, even if he's not 100%, him being on the floor at like 85% is still, one, obviously better than most players in the history of the game. But two is also is so important, more so than most players just being on the court, because obviously we know how he stretches the floor and what he does to make Klay Thompson available, who you cannot double if Steph Curry is on the floor. You can't double either of them. That's part of their magic together. So I still believe more so in the Dubs. I just don't think there's any value on taking them. If you do think that they, if you feel like they're, because it's question marks. If you think they're ready to go, then what are you getting for minus 260? If you think there's a question about whether they're ready to go, and you add that question to, are they ready? Will one of them potentially even get hurt and just totally change the balance of the series? You could consider that as well. So that's the series talk. In this one, I do think we're going to get back to seeing at least closer to what the Dubs were before that, Draymond went down, and that happened on January 9th. And so a lot of the stats, you look at for them before January 9th, they were 6-12-3 to the over, which means they went under, right, or pushed in 15 of 21 games to start the season at home, 15-5-1 against the spread, including covering against the Nuggets there. And that, was all, as you mentioned, really due to the fact that they had a 98.8 defensive rating, allowing 99 points a game, also scoring about 113. So just blowing teams out. But really they'd blow teams out because they were limiting on defense, and they're the number one 3-point shooting team even before Klay got back, just with Steph and Jay Poole in there. You're talking about, it's about 16 made threes a game, which is number one, and 38% from three, number 3 in the league, so all of that to say, like, I think the under is a way better play here. I think this total should be a lot closer to like 215.5, 216.5, to be honest. And it's one of those things where I might, because I don't really care to touch the spread in game one, and until I get a little bit better sense of this, I just might even take an alternate spread down to like 219, 218, get about plus 135, plus 145 on my money, depending where you like it.
Or it's interesting that you just read off that they covered in 15 of 21 and they went under in 15 of 21 to start the season. Sounds like a correlation there. Maybe you just want Dubs money line and under. I feel you, because I'm the same way with the Celtics here. I'm not willing to just believe that the team I love is going to go out and handle business. But from a distance here, I think the Warriors are going to win this game one here. I think that there's just you can try to convince yourself that, the supporting cast around Joker feels disrespected, and they're going to go out and prove that it's not just Joker and a bunch of backup dancers. But at some point, like, talent is going to win out here, and the Warriors have 4 Hall of Famers almost out there, and just so much playoff acumen. But yeah. I mean, more just in support of the under, you look at Denver going over in 7 of their last 10 road games, right, with a really good defensive rating in there, which is, first of all, important for what I'm saying, Warriors under. But then they went over in just 4 of 15 games against quality teams or teams that slow the pace a little bit. Yeah. And the Dubs do slow the pace when they get into the playoffs. They've also gone under in 7 of their last 9 at home. The 2 exceptions were when Steph came back, had his first game with Draymond. It was Draymond's first game back, but Steph went off for 49 points right away. Against Washington. I mean, let's take that with a grain of salt. And then the other one against the Lakers with no LeBron, AD, or even Russ. And the Warriors defense is back to where it was. They're number 1 in field goal defense in that span, allowing second fewest assists, allowing 108 points per game, where they were allowing 99 at the early part of the season when Draymond was fully healthy. And the pace is down below 98. The pace for Denver last season in the playoffs, the last couple seasons, actually, you look back, last season it was 96. And then the season before that, when they had Jamal Murray cooking, it was 94, and they were still only scoring 107 points per game. Now, I mean, their defense was just so much worse in the playoffs because Michael Porter Jr. was out there posting an individual 122 defensive rating, and he helped their offense go up by 7 points as well. Neither of those guys being a factor right now. I'm just more looking at slower pace. Jokic knowing he has to pace himself, knowing what he has to do all over the floor for this team. I like unders across the board basically, definitely. And I do think that the Warriors, that plays into their hands if it's going to be a low scoring game in clutch time.
Definitely. I think, one last thing, interestingly, that you said a minute ago, too, was the team total for the Dubs is minus 140. If you want it at 114.5, right? Yeah. The total of the game is 223.5, and the Dubs are favored by 4.5. To do the math for you at home,
they're favored by 6.
Essentially, they're up by 6.5 now. Damn, this keeps going up. There's no way I can take that in game one. Either way, I think there's some value on the Dubs under as well, but I think there's value on it because, or I'm sorry, I'm not saying there's value on it. I'm saying you're getting better odds for it in a way, and the math adds up that it's you're getting a decent sort of bet for, you're getting a decent return for betting on that 114.5 essentially, because it's not nearly out of the question that the Splash Brothers go off, that Steph gets around 40 points, maybe Clay has like 25. Jordan Poole, by the way, is also out there. Maybe he's close to 18, right? And now you're talking about a lot of points for them and what have you. And we'll see how that goes. But I do think like the main point that we're making about this under is that we think the total is too high because the Dubs are back to what they were at the beginning of the season with that incredible defensive rating. There's a little bit of a bloated line total there because of the fact that on the road, the Nuggets have been playing so incredibly well offensively against awful teams, against the Kings, against the Blazers, the Kings twice, the Blazers, the Lakers, the Wizards, right? Just all bottom feeders who just don't play defense, especially don't play defense down low against the best center and probably MVP. Well, let's say one of the top 2 centers in the league. So no one Philly gets mad. But then you look at, like you were saying, the previous 15 games before their last 10 where they were playing against all these duty offense or defenses, they're playing against really good defenses like Boston, Toronto, even the Thunder who chop it up and slow it down, Dallas and the Clippers. And when you play against those teams, they're talking about a 97.5 pace. That's bottom 10 in the league, a 109 offensive rating, also bottom 10 in the league. And I'm not saying it's going to be that bad. I think Joker can do okay and he can get assists, but other guys on his team, need to put the ball in the basket for him to even record those assists. And that's where we don't have nearly as much confidence. And this game's going to have to slow down and he's going to have to shoot the ball every time or at least have it in his hands for the majority of each possession down the stretch if they're going to have any shot at this. So either way, that bodes well for unders. And I think money line for the Dubs is where I'd lead before I thought about a 7-point spread for them in a game that I don't think will be a blowout unless like as we said, the two Splash Bros go unconscious from 3, which is never, ever out of the question until they're not playing basketball anymore. So that is all the time we have for you in this one, y'all. Make sure you are liked and subscribed to that page. We're going to continue to bring you every single playoff game throughout this season. And until we see you next, happy betting.